Hi there, HIN 620 folks. This is Rob Levine. We're going to go over one of the exercises in the book to give you an idea of how things work and how MySQL Workbench can be used. We'll do exercise 1 in chapter 10, which is setting up an EER diagram, an entity relationship diagram that stores information about products. So the first thing to do is once you've started your instance from after starting up, you go in and you say new model, and that puts you in this mode here where you're creating your own new diagram. Or sorry, you're creating the model first, and then you'll create a diagram from that. What I found to be somewhat unintuitive is that you need to double click on something to create a table. So we'll do that first, and we'll call it products. Yep. I tend to do things in caps for tables and columns. It's really your choice. I don't think there's any right or wrong answer. So the first column name would be product ID, because everything needs a primary key and a unique one. So by clicking on the PK here, you get primary key. The NN is not null, because you definitely don't ever want that to be null, and you also want it to be unique in this case. What's also special about this, and that was in the chapter, is you want it to auto-increment, which means each time you create a new row or you insert a new row into this table, the ID will automatically increment from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, whatever. So you don't have to specifically state the ID when you're inserting a row into the table. So what else we have here is a product name, and we want that to be non-null. Product description, and any of this stuff you can go back and change, especially before you add data to it. We'll make the product description bigger than just the name, so I change it to 500. We want that to be non-null, and then product product price. We'll make that a decimal. You can kind of look up why, what's the difference between decimal, double, and float. That's not really worth going into now. That should be non-null as well. And then remember, each product needs to go in a category. So we're going to call it category ID. So in theory, we probably should have set up the category table first, just to make it more obvious. But you'll see how that works. So let's add another table, which is category. And this is another thing about table naming. You can feel free to name it category or categories. Some people have different policies on that. I'm just going with the plural at this point. So category ID. And another thing about naming columns here is some people will choose to just make this ID, and within the table it's obvious that it's the category ID, but once you start making queries to join different tables together, I think it makes a lot more sense to have category name than have just name, because you're going to see name in many different places. So category ID, again, same thing, primary key, non-null, unique key, and auto increment. And then category name, non-null, category description, make that 500 as well. not null. And as you see here, you can do this different ways by either clicking these checkboxes here or the checkbox over here. And that is pretty much it. Description. Okay. So let's just save this guy now. So you say save model. Since it's new, it'll ask you what to do with it. So I already created one called chapter 10.1 model. So I'm going to save it over that. Now, one thing that we didn't do yet that's easy to forget about at this point because it's not actually necessary for the code to work, but it makes the diagram a lot clearer, is to set up a foreign key. And remember, if that's not a term you've heard before, it's not a very complicated topic. It just means that this key in this table refers to this other key in another table. And it's just kind of a fancy term for that. It's actually a pretty good term because it's sort of a foreign table. So in this case, the product is pointing to which category it belongs to. So the product is going to have the foreign key that's going to point to the category ID. So if we go back to the product table, and at the bottom here, click on foreign keys, you see that there's nothing there. So let's create a foreign key called category ID. And what's the table I'm going to reference? I'm going to reference categories. By the way, this MyDB here is the default name that it came up with for the schema. You can change it to, chapter 10 or Rob or whatever you want to call it. So I said this is going to be the name of my foreign key. Sorry, I actually should make it category ID FK for foreign key. And then I click on that and I come over here and I say, okay, the column is the category ID, and the column that I'm going to reference in the other table is going to be the category ID as well. So that's how you connect them. And then the best part is where you want to come up with the diagram. So let's create a diagram from the catalog objects. This is my favorite part because you get to see it visually. And it kind of scrunches them together, but you just pull them apart. And now you see what you have here is you have these two tables with the fields that you gave them. And when you click on this connector link, you can see what the relationship is. So it's related via the foreign key. It tells you that the product's foreign key points to categories. And then if you look at the foreign key itself, it gives you even more information about it. And this is another fancy schmancy word that you'll see frequently called cardinality, as to what kind of relationship it is. Is it one-to-one or is it one-to-many? And in this case, it's one-to-many, and you can make the changes if you want to. So that is a example of how you set up the EER diagram using MySQL Workbench for Chapter 10, Exercise 1.